And if you didn't see that interview, we're going to have excerpts from that. We're going to have an update from him live at the bottom of the hour as to what his current status is. But what they did was they shut down an entire police force, small-town police force, but they shut down the entire force because of a TSA agent who had a vendetta with him. Now, this is something that is much wider than that. But what we're seeing here is the arbitrary exercise of power. This is something that we see happening with the president, with his executive orders, and it permeates the entire government. It's systemic. It goes all the way down to local law enforcement in many cases, as we've seen with the police, but certainly the TSA is a large part of it. And it's not just that. It's not just their petty vindictiveness. This is part of a total surveillance grid with the NSA. We've interviewed William Binney before. Not too long ago, we interviewed him on this radio program. And he was the former global technical director of the NSA. So unlike a lot of these billionaire critics who are opposing the NSA, they say there's nothing to worry about. Why is everybody getting so upset? People like Mark Andreessen, who founded Netscape, they're pushing back on this and say, we just don't understand the technical issues. Well, you know who does understand the technical issues? The guy who worked for them for over 3 decades, who was the technical director of the NSA globally. He resigned, became a whistleblower because he saw the criminal actions that were taking place. And he knows fully well what their capabilities are. And when I talked to him, one of the things that he told me was that he had monitored for years the Soviet Union as well as East Germany. He knows how this tyranny rolls out. He's seeing exactly the same things happening now, only much more sophisticated, much more technologically sophisticated. He knows exactly how that's playing out. And he had said not too long ago that we are this far from a police state, holding his fingers very close to each other. And then recently, just before the interview, he said, we now have a police state. Well, how does this police state work? Well, guess what? It turns on the police themselves. In many cases, just like this police chief here in a small town in New Mexico, he'd been pretty much insulated against the police state effects that many of us feel as citizens. And he had purposely avoided flying just for that type of reason. He knew what was there. He wasn't totally naive. He was going to a constitutional sheriffs and peace officers association, so he knew what was going on. This is a guy of integrity, and his first instinct, as you'll hear in this interview, was to cooperate, as all of our instincts are. But after a while, you realize that the government is so far over the edge. They keep pushing, that at one point you assert your constitutional rights. Listen to this interview. This is how he laid it out last night on the Nightly News.
Myself and retired Sheriff Rene Rivetta, who was at that time serving as the deputy chief for my agency, we were en route to attend this conference in Las Vegas, and due to former investigations that I've been involved in, very high-profile case, my name was changed legally through the courts, and it was sealed under record. And so I have 2 different names. I haven't flown in years by choice because of the conduct of TSA. But for this particular event, I really had no choice. And so I told Sheriff Rivetta, let's go talk to a TSA supervisor, explain, our circumstances, because my biggest concern was regarding my driver's license. The expiration date had just expired. So we go upstairs and we speak to a supervisor. She was very cordial. We explained to her our circumstances, and she said, not a problem. It's within 1 year of expiration, so you can fly. There's no issue. I said, thank you so much. We go downstairs. We go to the ticket counter, present identification again. We're provided with our tickets and our boarding passes. We book in our luggage, and then here comes a young officer from the Albuquerque Aviation Police, and he's being quite stern in his demeanor and so forth. He says, I need to speak with you guys. Okay. So myself and Sheriff Rivetta goes off to the side with this individual and another officer, and we speak with him. He demands to see identification. We provide him with identification, and he starts questioning us. I said, what's going on? And he says, well, you were named as a suspicious person. I said, really? I said, what is so suspicious about me? He said, did you go upstairs? And I said, yeah, I did. I spoke with the TSA person up there. Well, what were you discussing with them? I said, I had a question about my flight itinerary and any problems that may arise from an expiration date and so forth. I don't recall the exact verbiage I used, but that was the gist of the conversation. And so ultimately, I finally said, am I being charged with something? Am I free to go? He gave us our information back, and we were sent on our way. And we go upstairs through the TSA screening. Sheriff Rivetta was allowed right through. When I approached, the lady asked me where I was going. I tell her that I was going to Las Vegas. And she then asked what was my business there. I made the statement that that's private, and I kept walking. So then I get up to the scanner, and I put all my stuff through the scanner. I went through the metal detector, and I was forced to go through it 3 times. I didn't have any metal on me, that I was aware of, but it kept going off. Nonetheless, I get through the thing, get all my stuff back, and I start walking towards the turnstile, and I'm approached by a man in a dark suit who flaps open a wallet and shuts it and puts it back in his pocket. I don't know who he was with. He never showed me a card or nothing like that. I don't have anything from him. He was not wearing a uniform, but he claimed to be a federal investigator. Those were his words. And so he demands to see identification, and I tell him, we've already been through this. I've already presented my identification at least 3 times to various officials. What's going on? And he told me that I was a person of interest, that I was listed as being suspicious. So I comply. I give him my credentials, and he really just sort of belabored the point, and I finally just asserted my First Amendment rights, my Fourth Amendment rights, and it really upset him. You could see it in his demeanor. Ultimately, I gave him a scenario. I said, sir, the way you're treating me, I said, how would you like it if I were to treat you that way? And I said, just for example, you come through my jurisdiction. I don't have probable cause. I don't have reasonable suspicion. There's nothing suspicious about you, but I just pull you over and say, I stopped you because you're suspicious. Mm-hmm. And you ask me, well, what's suspicious about me? And I went through this whole scenario, and I said, you wouldn't appreciate that very much, would you? And he said, I'm paid to be suspicious. I said, really? You're paid to be suspicious of law enforcement officers? I said, I will remember that the next time I pull over a TSA agent, that they are paid to be suspicious of me, a cop. And in other words, I was pointing out the idiosyncrasy of what he was saying.
They're paid to treat everyone as if we are guilty. They're trained to treat us all as terrorists, even though, as we just reported, they allowed the Muslim Brotherhood to get a VIP pass when they came here. So you're Al-Qaeda, you're suspicious just because you're an American. But go ahead, tell us what happened then after did anything happen, or at that point you were allowed to get onto the plane?
Well, he starts closing distance on me, becoming increasingly more hostile, making statements that you don't cop an attitude with me. Do you understand? So he's speaking to the chief of police as though I'm a convicted felon on the street who's in the process of committing some crime. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the aviation police sort of got between us and allowed us to be on our way. And we did. We'd stopped off at our gate. We got a jug of orange juice. Was just getting some refreshments, and a person in plain clothes walks up and takes our picture and walks off.
Oh,
and I
really?
thought, that is just so odd. So we get on our plane. I had no carry-on. Once we land, we get our baggage. My baggage had been searched. Huh. They turned on my laptop computer, attempted to access my laptop computer.
Wow.
And I thought that was suspicious. And so we go to this thing. I didn't know what I was getting into when I went to this Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association meeting. I knew very little about it. But once I got there, my eyes were opened. I saw a group of men and women, law enforcement, decorated law enforcement officers from all over the country, painstakingly constructing documents to help preserve our American way of life. Mm-hmm. Men, grown men, with tears rolling down their face, grieving over what was happening to our country. And I realized I'm onto something here. This is bigger than all of us. This is about our God-given rights. And so I signed on. I got on board wholeheartedly. The moment I got on the ground and turned on my cell phone, my department-issued cell phone, I had a message from the Sandoval County Sheriff's Department. I made contact with Lieutenant Bonelli, who stated that my law enforcement credentials with the Sheriff's Department were being revoked. So I'm cross-commissioned. I had dual authority. Mm-hmm. So that dual authority was being revoked by the sheriff, and was really no reason as to why. Now, if I didn't already state this, I'm going to restate it if I did. While in the airport in Albuquerque, and having this confrontation with this unethical, unconstitutional TSA agent, he made the statement to me, I know people in your district, and I'm going to make some phone calls. Well, he lived up to his word. He contacted Sheriff Doug Wood of the Sandoval County Sheriff's Department, made his allegations. Now, the key thing to remember is Sandoval County has nothing to do with Bernalillo County, which is where the airport is housed. So he had no jurisdiction over this issue. It was unethical for a lot of reasons, but Sheriff Wood then made a complaint to my agency, and I was called in on my day off, placed on administrative leave, ordered to collect all handguns, badges, commission cards, uniforms, equipment from my officers, and then to report for a town hall meeting tonight at 6 o'clock.
Now, we're going to have him at the bottom of the hour with an update at what happened at that town hall meeting. But this is really amazing. This is a man of integrity who just 1 week, less than a week earlier, prior to this happening, he had received a meritorious commendation from the mayor. Now, he was fired by a combination of the mayor and the sheriff of the county where he is a police chief, and he told me when I spoke to him last night that in this small town there was only about 150 people. 125 of them had signed a petition to keep him. So we're going to find out what happened about that. But I want you to pay attention to what was in the article and what he said, that he was approached by a federal agent who told him that he was a person of interest. And when he was fired, the sheriff of Sandoval County said that his entire police department was being disbanded because of political affiliations.
I'm Darren McBreen, and these are some of the new items that are available now at InfoWarsShop.com. Alert the public to Obama's blatant abuse of power with the new Obama t-shirt. Obama's Joker face on the front and come and take it on the back. It's time to publicly call him out for what he is, a tyrant. Defend the Second Amendment with our top seller Come and Take It t-shirts. And look at that, women's cut tank tops and t-shirts now available. Nice hat. Plus the Don't Tread on Me flag. And now you can become a micro distributor of the InfoWars magazine. Plus, get your own copy delivered right to your door each and every month. And if you're tired like I am of you and your family being exposed to polluted drinking water, get the Pro One high performance water filter. It gets rid of all pathogenic bacteria, cyst, fluoride, heavy metals, and numerous other contaminants. So join the revolution at InfoWarsShop.com.
New Mexico police chief who was suspended, is actually the correct term, he's placed on leave, but his entire police force was disbanded. Now, there was a meeting last night to see whether his employment would be continued and what the conditions of that are going to be. We're going to have him at the bottom of the hour live to give us an update. I might have said that he was fired earlier. That's not true. He was not fired. He was placed on leave, but his entire police department was disbanded. They had to turn in their badges, turn in their guns. Understand how dangerous this is. This is politically motivated. The reason that the sheriff who took this action gave was he had to disband his entire police department due to his, quote, political affiliations. He was approached at the airport by a man identifying himself as a federal agent and said that he was a person of interest. What had he done? Well, he was on his way to a Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association meeting. These are law enforcement officers who swear to uphold the Constitution, unlike the people that we met in San Antonio who went down there for the open carry rally. We talked to the San Antonio police chief and others with him. They would not verify that they would refuse an order to confiscate guns if given that order. They would not say that they were going to obey the Constitution that they swore to take an oath to. These peace officers and sheriffs would. It's a very important scenario. It is not a hypothetical scenario, as he said. Well, of course, all scenarios are hypothetical, but whether you're going to obey the Constitution or not is not a hypothetical. It's fundamental. We talked to Sheriff Mack last night. Let's hear what he had to say about this specific incident in New Mexico.
The TSA getting hold of a sheriff, a buddy, going behind his back, a backdoor deal, firing a good, honest, Christian, constitutional chief of police who was the only thing he did wrong during the time he left town to the time he got back was to attend a constitutional convention with the CSPOA. And this is the reason we had this meeting, was one, to establish a resolution to put the federal government on notice that they're not going to do anything like this in our areas. Mm-hmm. We now have a resolution. You've got to post this on Infowars.com. We have 8 things that these sheriffs, we have 41 public officials, now 42, and it's counting. We get more every day. But after this conference, the sheriffs and chiefs of police and peace officers and county commissioners and everybody who attended this, there was about 75 people, all agreed that this was the right thing to do, that we were going to put the IRS on notice, we're going to put the federal government on notice, that they're not going to be able to commit crimes in our jurisdictions anymore.
Yes.
And now we get this blowback and this happening to one of our officers. We've been praying and praying and fighting and praying and fighting and praying so that these sheriffs and this kind of chief of police would stand for principles of freedom, stand for their oath of office. We now have this happening. It's starting, and this is a peaceful revolution. It's a peaceful solution, and we've got to have everybody on board, or we're not going to make it.
As Sheriff Mack said, this is a peaceful revolution. It is something that you can be a part of. You can support this action, just as people supported the sheriff in Florida who was fired because he would not enforce unconstitutional gun regulations on someone there. He was reinstated. We have to fight this. We have to fight this collectively. And this is something that Alex has been saying for a long time, that the police are not going to be immune from these kind of power-tripping, illegal actions that we see the TSA and other federal agencies doing. This is something that is going to be a pervasive systemic corruption and oppression. And we're starting to see this now. If they can disband, whether it's because they had identified that he's going to this convention, or whether it's because he said at one point, I'm going to stand on my First Amendment and my Fourth Amendment rights, that's all I'm going to give you, whether that annoyed them and they disbanded the police department, this is the kind of power they should not have. We look at this situation with the Super Bowl. They're going to have to go 2 hours early in Arctic weather to go through security. I mean, people that are going to the Super Bowl like Jakari Jackson and Josh, they're going to be sitting out there in this Arctic weather for 6.5 hours just because of, well, 2 hours of it is going to be because of these useless procedures. Any security expert will tell you that what they're doing is creating a very dangerous situation by bunching everybody up outside of a security zone. And even if it were effective, are you willing to give up your freedom and your liberty, your God-given rights, for the promise of that security? There is no trade-off. You cannot trade it off. You're either free or you're a slave. You're not partially free.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.